going to hand over to Lise again and her team of colleagues working on visual AI and early conflict. So Lise.
Okay, thank you so much, Rachel. So I think, Catherine, you wanted to say a few words to introduce the session, because I think you're chairing.
I am indeed chairing. Thank you. We're going to, it was a great discussion, and it's wonderful to be leading on to a specific project now. So as Rachel said, we're going to hear from 3 members of the Eycon team who are working on a project related to visual AI and early conflict photography. And I'm going to briefly introduce the 3 members of the team who will be speaking and introducing that work to us. The first is Daniel Folliard, who's based at the Université de Paris. He's a historian whose core interest is in modern European imperialisms. And his first book, Dislocating the Orient, British Maps of the Making of the Middle East, 1854 to 1921, was published by the University of Chicago Press. His second book, Combattre, Punir, Photographier, is thrillingly being published in English. It was published in French by La Découverte in 2020, but I'm very pleased to say that it's coming out with Manchester University Press under the title The Violence of Colonial Photography by the end of this year. Second speaker, and I don't know if this is the order you'll be going in, but is Lise Jaillant, who you are familiar with by now during the course of today, but I'm going to introduce her again anyway. She's a senior lecturer in digital humanities here at Loughborough. She's led various projects funded by the AHRC, including Aura, Archives in the UK, Republic of Ireland and AI, bringing together digital humanities, computer scientists and stakeholders to unlock cultural assets. She's also been the PI on a network called Aeolian, which is AI for cultural organizations. She edited recently a book called Archives, Access and AI, and has also written numerous articles, and I'll just mention one of them: More Data, Less Process, a user-centered approach to email and born digital archives. Our third speaker is going to be Julian Chou from the Université Paris-Nanterre, who has led various projects on digital humanities, funded by the French National Research Agency. And I'll just mention one of them, the Numa Press project, which aims to write a history of the French press from 1800 from digitized collections. And that involves the creation of databases and digital tools for automatic analysis. And he is a specialist in the history of the illustrated press at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries. So thank you very much for joining us. Lise has just put in the chat the details of the full team, and I do encourage you to have a look at that and their wonderful website. So welcome, thank you. Who's going to kick off? Is it Danielle? Or
it's myself. Thank you.
Welcome.
So Marina and Sumik, if you want to share your screen, and by the way, I should say that the presentation, we have Marina and Sumik as well, who are part of the Eycon team on the French side, and of course, Daniel and Julien, as Catherine said. So I can see Marina's screen. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Marina. So yes, as Catherine explains, the Eycon project is a UK-French project. So we are very lucky to have funding from the AHRC on the UK side. So Marina, if you want to move on to the next slide, please. Yeah, just the previous one, please. Yeah, okay, so the AHRC is our funder on the UK side, and we have funding from LabEx on the French side, and also from the Université Paris-Cité, also, of course, on the French side. So it's quite a large project with, lots of people with various backgrounds. And this morning, we talk about the fact that, interdisciplinary collaborations is really the way forward, when we talk about, of course, AI applied to cultural heritage. And what we want to do with this project is really to apply AI to historical war photos, especially photos of the early 20th century and also late 19th century. And this morning, actually, so today is the official launch for the project. So we are so happy, to present the project to you guys today. And we have this press release that was just issued this morning. So have a look if you're interested. So you've seen the project website already. We have a list of project partners. So again, both on the UK side and also on the French side. So on the UK side, we are very happy to work with the Imperial War Museum in London, with the National Library of Scotland in Edinburgh, the Wellcome Collection in London as well. And we have a long list of partners in France. I'm not going to include all of them, but have a look at the list here. So we are working with Data Lab, for example, at the BNF, at the French National Library, the Musée du Quai Branly Museum, which is actually hosting a workshop that we are organizing in June. So again, if you're interested in the project, have a look at our website because we'll have some news very soon. And I really encourage you to have a look at our Twitter accounts, which is, at the moment, we don't have a lot of followers because we've just started as a project. But, if you want to follow us, we'd be very, very grateful at this point. So I'm going to hand over to Daniel, who's going to say a few words specifically about the project. You're muted, Daniela.
Thank you, everyone. I'm really glad to introduce the project. I'm going to talk about the perimeter and the main resource questions, and then Julien will address the more technical issues. So it's very much a work in progress. We are in the early stages. So if I follow the Gartner's modeling of expectation, I think we are in the peak of inflated expectations at this point. The idea is to focus on late 19th century, early 20th century visual culture with a point of entry specifically on armed conflict and armed violence. Why this limited scope and data perimeter? The idea is it's the first era of photo inflation. We have quite a huge mass of portable cameras circulating at the time, more and more amateur photographers, even soldiers taking pictures of colonial expeditions or major interstate conflicts. And it is also the moment when the first generation of professional war photojournalists emerged. So in that time as well, the expression that is the phrase that is often used to describe the pre-1914 conflict situation is World War Zero. You've got a multiplication of small and large scale armed conflicts. So the idea was to connect that first moment from the 1890s to 1914 to the First World War, and to create a very large corpus of images and semantics to try and analyze visual culture at scale. And since we are also at that time in an era of industrialization of photographic printing and a completely different world in terms of how the press function. Can you just go back, Maina? Yeah. The idea is to start working on this because of the very large quantity of digitization projects that are going on. There's an ocean of images available as digital surrogates to document this. And our idea, even if it's obviously complicated, is to have a sort of cross-archival approach to get a large amount of messy visual and semantic material, extract our own images with automated metadata creation to create a huge corpus of images and start analyzing it using AI tools. So the main objectives are described here, and the idea is to open a new front rather than taking easy to approach mass collections of visual material. The idea is to use that project to de-invisibilize material, specifically from non-European battlefields and terrains. We're very interested in colonial warfare, documented in images in particular. And the idea is to use data mining operations, application of computer vision tools to overcome this dissemination, to extract material, to identify patterns, and to try and map circulations of images. And the idea is to use artificial intelligence and machine vision with and against the grain. We are clearly not the objective is clearly not to live in a sort of techno-solutionism atmosphere. We don't believe that full automation is possible. It's possible for purely technical tasks, but it's a chimera when it comes to purely historical work. So since cultural bias is inherent to any application of artificial intelligence, the project wants to make clear how it's going to use these tools to identify these patterns and these circulations. So explainability is one of the key aspects of our work. And we believe that this project, being narrow focused, is also a way to have a very hands-on approach to combine different expertise, fields of expertise. So Lise, Julien, we all come from different places. Marina is involved in data structuring. Sumik is a computer science expert. And we're also working with the LIPAD lab here at the Université de Paris, which is the computer science lab, which will supervise and support our work. So we want to combine data collection, structuring, historical research questions to try and explore the possibilities here on a given perimeter. One of the avenues, one of the potential avenues is to apply what I would call, what many people call dual use of existing data sets. I'm thinking about face analyzers, data sets on weaponry, and use transfer learning, human augmentation, and fine-tuning as a potential avenue to adapt these systems, these solutions to our historical and archival question. And another objective is clearly to use artificial intelligence at scale to show the imbalances and erasures in the visual archive. I'm talking, for instance, about gender, race, places, and specific conflicts. We're also very interested in outliers. I was very interested in Ahmed's visualizations, showing Mondrian standing somewhere really far away from the rest. I think vectorization of images can also be a way to explore anomalies in the visual culture, and they can be extremely interesting points of entry in the evolution of visual culture. So we want also, and it's not directly connected to artificial intelligence, but we want also to explore effective visualizations of large visual corpus, and that will be the last phase of the project. We're going to try and implement different ways to envision the database and make what artificial intelligence clear to everybody. You've seen the long list of partners. The idea is to link silos in institutions, and Eycon should be, we hope, will be an opportunity to start discussions between a wide range of stakeholders between France, Britain, and hopefully that discussion is going to bring in more people as we go. Obviously, since the material we're going to use is very sensitive, there is the question, and I'm sure we might address this in a Q&A moment, of how do we deal with very graphic material, very problematic visual material. So our first strategy, given the pretty large amount of images, despite the pretty large amount of images, will be to tag individually the most graphic images to make sure they do not appear in the database, at least not automatically. And the project will also release on the website close readings of specific images. We actually already started this with a tweet post this weekend showing probably what I believe is the first woman war photographer who's still to be identified in our database. So the idea is to balance the very cold artificial intelligence digitized version of this with close reading analysis and go back to the materiality of images. Marina, can you move on to the next slide? Thank you. So yes, three main layers in this project. First, and probably the most important, certainly the most important, 80% of the job that's on Marina's shoulders, structuring the database, cleaning the database. We have a lot of misaligned data structures between the different institutions we're working with. And then we already developed a series of technical solutions to apply AI to these photographs and their attached semantics. And then we'll, in the summer of 2023, hopefully we'll be able to show a demo website to display the results. Can you move on to the next slide, Maya? Thank you. So the corpus is armed conflicts in photographs from 1890 to 1918. With a focus, we are trying to ask our partners to give us as much untapped material as they can on colonial warfare and non-European terrains. One of the ideas is also to use this project to de-invisibilize overlooked instances of armed violence. So maybe the next slide is going to show some of the highlights of the collection. One example here, which is extremely important to us, is coming from a set of images which is held in Vincennes at the Service Historique de la Défense, coming from a massive collection from one of the pioneering news image agency of the Belle Époque in France. And none of these images is clearly documented in terms of its circulation and authorship. And Eycon, one of Eycon's objectives is to recreate metadata for these images. And that's the specific image I was talking about. If you look at the top right corner of the image, you're going to see a figure that we identified as probably one of the first women war correspondents in the region. This is from the invasion of Tripolitania by the Italians in 1911. But the Victor Forbin photographic collections covers most conflicts and catastrophes from the late 1890s to the 1920s. Marina, can you switch to another example? It's coming from La Contemporaine. La Contemporaine has a huge collection, 100,000 images from the French photographic, military photographic section. And I chose this one for obvious reasons. It's one of the first war photographs taken in Odessa in 1918. Given the green news we have from Ukraine, I want to emphasize the fact that part of the project is also to diversify our vision of our visuality of armed conflict, to have a broader approach of what war meant in images from the late 19th century. Next slide, please, Marina. Very quickly, we want to use AI not as a very cold solution. The problem with extracting images is to disconnect them from metadata and text in general. So there's the very great risk of context collapse if you're not absolutely methodologically clear about this. What we're going to do is try and use image similarity search and other solutions to try and work against context collapse and work on image viralities, image circulations. The Forbin Fund gives you a good idea of what could be done with such solutions to try and trace the reuses of such images in the newspapers, and following Deborah Poole's very good distinctions between face value, the formalism of the image, and exchange value, the circulation and the material life of photographs. We believe that artificial intelligence tool can actually help create more context to understand how these images are linked between one another. Marina, next slide. Thanks. And that's now Julien Soumit's turn. Thank you very much.
Hello. So right now I am a recent current working engineer. So basically my working process is for developing the deep learning tools for how we can extract the different informations from the historical layout papers. So generally what happened that the historical document process is, well, I can say like digitized, which is written with the material from the past and the future of the historians. And nowadays what's happened, I can say like there are a lot of massive amount of data. And it is very difficult to, I can say, like capturing the explicit knowledge from the historical data. So I believe the deep learning and the computer vision, the opening the new opportunity for the computer science and researcher, as well as I can say the historian, to understand the more about the historical data So it is a good opportunity for us to use the deep learning method. So for example here, so we are trying to implement some of this method, for example, like layout parsers. So where we can we can extract a lot of semantic informations like titles, for example, like illustrations, and also like the text region or illustration of subtitles from the different historical archive data and the newspapers. So it could be very useful information for us, as well as for example, for a student, like they want to know about the more information, so they can go to the website when this application will be developed, so they can get easily more information about what they are looking for from there. So so we are trying to develop some of the algorithm using some of these current method, for example, like layout parser, or examples like deep layout or detect and true pi deep layout. But recently we are facing a lot of challenges because these data are, for example, has a lot of different kinds of patterns, different kinds of cross-domain patterns also. Frustrating, for example, for debugging, because there could be a lot of debugging process, and adapting our model could be also one kind of challenges, because there are several models at different formats. So there is also a problems. Third thing is that there is also, like I can say, like a lack of essential metadata, because it is also very, very important to have the metadata for semantic informations. And we also need to fine tune and refine tune and retraining our models, because some of these models are not adapted for this method. The next slide. So basically, we're trying to develop the other way. I can examples for with the CNN, with the ResNet 52, so which can extract the semantic informations as well as the visual informations from the research papers, or for anything from like colonization data, for example, like colonization troop identifications or geographical locations. So right now we are also trying to implement some of this method that already exist, and they perform very, very well. So for embedding the visual informations and the context informations, for example, using the ResNet 50. And we try to using this method using the graphical embedding, so knowledge graph. So basically, knowledge graph is also, I can say, is a powerful tools to describe the relations between the similarity of the data. So they're also using the same kind of things like I can say node to vectors also. So this method can be helpful for us to finding out the similar information. For example, so like when you click the data, for war pictures, so node to vector, this knowledge graph, they can provide you the similar informations. For example, like which colonization troop is there, or like which geographical locations were there. For example, maybe it could be from Canada, or maybe the Britain, or maybe some kind of war is happening in Ethiopia. So this kind of all the informations we can get from this deep learning library with the knowledge graph. So, but there is several problems that we are facing, and it could be a major challenges we have to be handled, because I can say the quality of the documents and the layout is different. There are also like rare vocabulary, for example, is very, very complicated also. And some of this archive data is content with I can say handwritten documents. So the handwritten is sometimes very difficult, because it's depend upon the printing quality of the I can say the images that we have. And there is also facing some problem like a non-standard I think typeface problems, and also the degrading of the printing documents as well as, and another problems like I can say the accepted about the public dataset, because the colonization datasets is very less. So training our model of this kind of dataset, we have to be work very hard, and we are also working for some of this method, for example, like domain adaptation and transfer learning. So we can use it for our dataset. And some of this model are, for examples, like most of the archive data is written with the Western language in English or classical European languages. And so it could not be effective to use this model can be a problem for, like, for example, for like Hindi or Chinese or Japanese and Korean languages. So that is also a problematic. So that's why we trying to use to learn or train our model to the different data set. Maybe we can using in future for example, we already we provide here to domain adaptation, and we fine tune our model to we can adapt to extract the more information from this data set. So I think Julia will explain more about this, and if there is any technical questions, I will happy to answer in the end when Julia will finish his presentation.
Thank you, Sumik. I'll try to be quite brief. I have a few examples of the challenges that we face and of the way that we try to answer them. So first of all, we have a lot of complex documents. We work on a really heterogeneous document. And in order to retrieve our corpus of illustration and to launch classification and similarity search analysis, we must first extract these images from the pages. And the layouts of all these documents, albums and newspapers are complex and change over time. And so, for example, a model trained on the press of the 1890s gives disappointing results on 20th century magazine. Maybe you can show the next slide, Marina. And so this evolution and the variation between periodicals and other type of archival objects makes it necessary to train several models, which is really time consuming, and especially if the corpus has to be annotated manually. So maybe 2 slides, Marina. So fortunately, we can rely on corpora from partner institutions that have already been processed using OLR, which is optical layout recognition, a process that not only identifies image and text blocks, but also specifies the categories to which each area belongs. So titles, text blocks, tables, advertising, illustration, caption. And the BNF, for example, has applied optical layout recognition to the Excelsior, which is an early 20th century French illustrated newspaper, which pioneered the extensive use of photography in a newspaper. And the BNF, the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, has produced Alto XML files in which this information is stored. And so we can use these files to retrieve information on the areas of interest to us and to train illustration and caption extraction models to apply to our document. So next slide, please. The problem is then to find our way through this huge corpus of images. What do they represent? Can we identify major graphic typologies? Can we identify changes in the subjects and composition of these images? So this is on the slide a few of the classification question that we want to address, such as the identification of the reproduction technique, or the authority, or identification of graphic prototypes. And so rather than relying solely on classification based on the graphic content of images, the Eycon project aims to propose a multimodal approach. The corpus at our disposal has been treated in very different ways by the institution where they were archived. Some documents are documented only at the level of the archive box, while others have been the subject of extremely precise descriptive work with metadata for each image, specifying the subjects, the objects represented, the production technique, the geolocation, and so on. And we also have the captions extracted from the periodicals that will give us a lot of descriptive data for each image. And next slide, please. So the diversity of processing allows us to have vast data to train classification models by combining natural language processing and optical recognition approaches. And here are a few of the objectives, such as the detection and the recognition of objects and of people in an ethically responsible perspective. Next slide, please. So the use of pre-trained models on contemporary corpora is problematic with the production of anachronistic recognition. That is what Una Murphy was talking about this morning, with the use of off-the-shelf solution. And the LIPAD laboratory, which is a partner of the Eycon project, has, for example, produced object recognition on the Colbert collection of the 19th century photographs by applying the ImageNet neural network which was trained on 21st century photographs. And while some objects are well classified, we have surprising results, such as this photograph of Japanese bed where the neural network recognized a teddy bear. So therefore we must retrain the networks on new objects and classes in order to allow certain objects, groups, or person to become visible again through this tool. And next slide, please. So similarity research will also be necessary to evaluate what Daniel was talking about, the circulation of photographs, both between albums and in the illustrated press. There are already a lot of projects working on the circulation of this kind of images, but young photography, the early stage photography, which is of poor quality and which is also poorly reproduced in newspaper, is more difficult to exploit by AI because of the processes of cropping, the use of different reproduction technique, the addition of elements, the highlighting or modification of certain shapes before printing, as you can see in this example from the Forbin collection. And so the objective of the project is to be able to identify similarities between images in the database, between the database and other database, and also between part of one image and other images. Identify the transformation techniques, identify various reproduction techniques, and so on. And so the project would like to take advantage of this extraordinary mass of metadata that has already been produced by heritage institutions and to rely on the diversity of their approaches in order to train models for processing archive that recreate the context of production of this object. And so by bringing these archives into dialogue, by breaking down the data silos, machine learning should make it possible to view and explore massive corpora that has been largely ignored and to revisit archival classification on an international scale, and above all, to propose new ontologies that would allow these objects to be considered as nodes in vast networks of circulation of cultural objects. And I'll let Marina conclude.
Yes, I don't know if I have many times to speak, just to analyze the importance of modeling the data before using it, because different stages are necessary to mix artificial intelligence and historical materials. To need to keep track of every context and metadata elements are fundamental for our attention, but it must be weakened. Thinking about the collecting and modeling data process, even if it looks basically easy to automatize, let emerge that we need to step in to make crucial choices in terms of which data we collect, how we preserve it with its metadata, description, origins, and how we display it while keeping trace of the choices we made on these processes. I think I don't have any time more.
It's true, Marina. We are terribly short of time.
Yes.
If you could,
so I will finish on that. It's okay.
Okay, I'm terribly sorry. It's a fascinating project, and you know, people will undoubtedly explore more on the webpage. But thank you to all of the speakers for introducing that wonderful project. It's visually beautiful as well as being interesting in its own right. And if we've got time for questions, let's leave them to the end.